Princess Alara of Avari stood at the viewport of Citadel Station and watched the silver moon turn below. It was 2 hours past midnight. The diplomatic quarters slept, the corridors lay empty, and she was about to make a choice that would change everything. She had been on this station for 2 months. 2 months of state dinners where every word was calculated. 2 months of ceremonial functions where her bioluminescent patterns had to display exactly the right combination of colors to convey respect, interest, diplomatic warmth. 2 months of guards flanking her every movement, of council members watching her every gesture, of being Princess Alara instead of just Alara. She was 26 years old. She had never made a single important decision about her own life. The station hummed around her. 17 species lived here in carefully negotiated proximity. Humans administered the American sector. Avery maintained the diplomatic wing. Other species occupied their designated zones. Everyone followed protocol. Everyone stayed in their lanes. Everyone played their roles. Alara was tired of playing hers. 3 weeks ago, her mother had said something unusual. Queen Cassia rarely spoke in anything but careful diplomatic language, even with her daughter. But that evening, after another exhausting reception, Cassia had dismissed the attendants and poured 2 glasses of Avari meditation wine. "There is a human sergeant the delegates speak of," her mother had said quietly. "Security detail, third watch. They say he embodies something our people would call Kath." Alara knew the word. Every Avari child learned it. Kath meant protective care offered without expectation of reward or recognition. Character revealed when no audience watches, no benefit accrues. It was the highest principle of Avari culture. It was also, in Alara's experience, almost entirely theoretical. The delegates gossip about a security sergeant, she had asked. "They respect him," Cassia corrected. "There is a difference. He helped Ambassador Terran's aide when she became disoriented in the ventilation sectors. He negotiated a dispute between Centauri merchants and human dock workers without filing formal complaints that would have damaged both parties' standings. He found a lost child from the Proxima delegation and stayed with her for 3 hours until her parents could be located, missing his own shift rotation." Alara had studied her mother's face. Cassia's patterns showed deep blue and silver colors of serious thought. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me 2 months ago if honor still exists beyond political necessity. I am suggesting you might observe whether it does." That conversation had stayed with Alara. She had pulled the station records on Sergeant Thatcher Morrison. Early 30s, born in a place called Montana on Earth. Farm background, enlisted military service. Transferred to Citadel Station Security 11 months ago. Exemplary record. Quiet, efficient, no disciplinary issues. No attempts to leverage his position. No political ambitions visible in any report. She had watched him sometimes from a distance. Seen him escorting delegates with patient courtesy. Seen him de-escalating an argument between 2 species who could barely communicate without his calm translation. Seen him checking access panels on his rounds with the kind of attention that suggested he actually cared whether the door sensors functioned properly. And she had made her decision. Tonight she would test whether Kath existed or whether it was just another beautiful fiction, her people told themselves. Alara moved through the dimmed corridors of the diplomatic quarter. She had dismissed her guards an hour ago, telling them she wanted to meditate privately in the sanctuary chambers. They had hesitated, but she was a princess. She could command privacy when she chose. They would wait outside the meditation suites, unaware she had no intention of entering. Her heart beat faster as she navigated the passages toward the residential sector. She had studied the station maps obsessively for 3 weeks. She knew exactly where Sergeant Morrison's quarters were. Section 7, Level 3, Unit 42. She knew the sanctuary chambers were in a completely different direction, 2 decks down in the cultural wing. When the guards reviewed the sensor logs later, it would be obvious she had not gone where she claimed. But by then, the test would be complete. She would have her answer. The residential corridors were quieter, dimmer. Night cycle lighting cast everything in soft blue. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered with her nervousness. She forced them to stabilize. Pale blue. Lost. Confused. Harmless. She stopped outside Unit 42. Behind that door, a human sergeant slept. Or tried to. The shift reports said he had worked a double rotation today. He would be exhausted. She was about to knock on his door at 3 in the morning and lie to him. Alara raised her hand, hesitated. She thought about her mother's careful words, about the council pressure for her to accept the arranged marriage to Lord Varen, about the fact that in the coming months Varen would arrive at this station to begin formal courtship, and she would have no grounds to refuse if she could not demonstrate an alternative path that served Avari interests. She thought about spending her life with a man who would be dutiful, honorable, appropriate, and completely uninterested in who she actually was beneath the title. She knocked. Silence. Then movement inside. The door opened. Thatcher Morrison stood in the doorway wearing a standard-issue thermal shirt and fatigue pants. His hair stuck up on one side. His eyes showed the particular exhaustion of someone who had been dreaming about sleep when reality interrupted. He focused on her. His expression shifted immediately from confused to alert to concerned. "Are you all right?" His first words. Not "who are you," not "what do you want," just concern for her well-being. Alara felt her patterns flicker, genuine response before she could control them. She forced her voice to sound small, uncertain. "I think I'm lost." He blinked, processed. She watched him assess the situation. An Avari woman in the corridor at 3 in the morning, alone, distressed. His tactical mind would be cataloging all the ways this could be a problem, a trap, a test. He stepped aside. "Come in, let's figure this out." No questions about who she was, no demand for credentials, no hesitation that suggested he was calculating advantage, just simple, immediate hospitality. The quarters were small, standard security staff housing. She saw books stacked on a desk, a jacket hung carefully on a wall hook, a coffee mug sitting empty on a side table. The space was clean but lived in, human, real. "The heating system's been malfunctioning all week," he said, moving to a storage compartment. "You're shivering." She was. She had not noticed until he mentioned it. He pulled out a thermal blanket and handed it to her. His hands never touched hers. Respectful distance maintained automatically. "Water," he offered. She nodded. Her throat had gone dry. This was not part of the script she had imagined. She had expected questions, skepticism, maybe suspicion. Not this immediate practical care. He poured 2 glasses from a dispenser and sat across from her in the small seating area. Not beside her, across, maintaining space, making her feel safe. "Where were you trying to go?" His voice was calm, gentle. The voice someone would use with a frightened child. "The sanctuary chambers." The lie came easier than she expected. "I could not sleep. I thought walking would help clear my mind. Then everything looked the same." He pulled out a data pad and brought up a station map. His fingers moved across the interface with easy familiarity. "Okay, we're here." He turned the pad so she could see. "The sanctuary chambers are here. 2 decks down, cultural wing. The lift system can be confusing at night when the directional holograms dim for night cycle." He had given her the perfect excuse. The station's fault, not hers. He was offering her dignity. Alara leaned forward to study the map. She noticed things about him in that moment. The way his hands moved with precision, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the fact that his eyes were tired but kind, the complete absence of calculation in his expression. "This station has a way of turning around on you," he said. "I once spent 20 minutes looking for section C7 during my first week. Turned out I had been reading the map upside down." A smile surprised her, genuine amusement at his self-deprecating story. "I am Alara," she said. "The truth, just not the complete truth." "Thatcher Morrison, Security Detail 3rd Watch." They talked. She had not planned for this part. She had imagined a brief encounter, enough to observe his character, then an exit. But he asked about where she was from, and she found herself describing the palace on Avari Prime. Not the political palace, the ceremonial one. The personal one. He asked about the meditation chambers, and she explained Avari contemplative practices. He mentioned farming in Montana, and she asked questions about growing wheat, about weather patterns on Earth, about the kind of life where your biggest problem was whether irrigation systems would hold through summer. 17 minutes passed. She knew because she tracked time obsessively, always aware of protocol and schedule. 17 minutes where she forgot she was a princess, where she was just a woman talking to a man who listened like her words actually mattered. Then the door chime sounded. Loud. Official. 3 sharp tones that meant security override. Thatcher stood immediately. His body language shifted to professional mode. He opened the door to find two Avari guards in full diplomatic security regalia and a human officer whose uniform identified him as Thatcher's supervisor. Sergeant Morrison. The human officer's voice was carefully neutral. We have been searching for Princess Alara of the Avari delegation. Princess, the word landed like a stone in water. Alara rose. She felt her patterns shift automatically to formal configuration. Gold and silver tracery, the colors of royalty spreading across her skin. She had suppressed them while playing her role. Now protocol demanded their display. Thatcher's face showed absolutely nothing. But she saw the microsecond of recognition, the instant where everything he thought he knew rearranged itself into new understanding. I became disoriented. Alara said, her voice taking on the formal cadence she had been trained to use. Sergeant Morrison provided assistance. The Avari guards moved to flank her. Their patterns showed protective orange. One of them activated a scanning device and swept the room. Standard security protocol, checking for threats, for evidence, for anything that might explain why a princess had been alone with a human sergeant for 17 minutes. Your Highness, the guard said, the sensors show you have been here for 17 minutes and 43 seconds. Protocol requires us to file a formal report. Of course, Alara replied. She turned to Thatcher. Their eyes met for one brief moment. She saw nothing but steady calm in his expression. No panic, no attempt to excuse or explain, just quiet acceptance of whatever would come next. Thank you for the water and the map, Sergeant Morrison. Then she was gone, swept away by guards and protocol, and the weight of her title leaving Thatcher standing alone in his quarters with a supervisor who looked deeply stressed. Alara sat in her private chambers 2 hours later and reviewed the sensor footage herself. She had access to all diplomatic quarter security recordings, one of the few privileges of her position. She watched herself knock on his door, watched him open it, immediate concern on his face, watched him offer blanket water distance, watched the way he never once looked at her like she was something to acquire or leverage, just someone who needed help. She watched herself laugh at his upside-down map story, a real laugh. She could not remember the last time she had laughed genuinely. She watched the guards arrive, watched her own patterns shift to royal display, watched Thatcher's face remain carefully professionally neutral. But she had seen something in that microsecond before his training took over. Not calculation, not fear of consequences, just realization that he had been kind to someone important, and now there would be complications. He had given her exactly what she came seeking, proof that Kath existed, that someone could offer care without expectation of reward, protection, without need for recognition. Character revealed when no audience watched, except an audience had been watching. The censors recorded everything in diplomatic quarters. She had known that. He must have known that too, which meant he had chosen kindness anyway. Alara sat in the darkness of her chambers and made another choice. This test had been about him. Whether he possessed the character she needed to know existed, he did. She had her answer. But something else had happened in those 17 minutes. Something she had not anticipated. She had felt like herself. Not Princess Alara, just Alara. A woman talking to a man who listened without agenda. She wanted to feel that again. 3 days later, Queen Cassia summoned Alara to private chambers. Her mother sat reviewing data streams on diplomatic negotiations, her patterns showing the deep concentration blue that meant she was managing 17 different conversations simultaneously across species and time zones. When Alara entered, Cassia dismissed all the screens with a gesture. You tested him as I suggested, Cassia said, not a question. Yes. What did you learn? Alara considered her words carefully. That honor still exists beyond political necessity, that someone can give Kath when the universe is not watching. The universe was watching, Cassia pointed out. The censors recorded everything. He did not know I was a princess. He had no reason to believe anyone important would ever review that footage. For him, there was no audience. Cassia's patterns shifted to warm gold. Approval. And now I want to know him better. Her mother studied her. Alara had never been able to hide anything from Cassia. The queen saw too much, understood too deeply. The council expects you to seriously consider Lord Varen's suit when he arrives. He is honorable, connected, politically advantageous. I know. But you want something different. Alara met her mother's gaze. I want what you had with father, a choice, a partnership, something real. Cassia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentler than Alara had heard in years. Then I will give you time. Not much. The council will only accept delay for so long, but enough to see if what you found in that corridor at 3 in the morning is something that can survive daylight. How will you manage the council? A small smile crossed Cassia's face. I am going to honor your human sergeant publicly for demonstrating wrath when he believed himself unobserved. The council cannot object to me rewarding the very principle we claim to hold most sacred. Alara felt understanding dawn. You are creating political cover. I am creating space for my daughter to discover whether she found something worth choosing. The rest is up to you. The commendation ceremony was held 4 days after the incident. The diplomatic reception hall glittered with delegates from 17 species, all dressed in formal attire that made the occasion feel momentous and strange. Alara stood beside her mother at the front of the hall. She wore full royal regalia, her patterns displaying the complex gold and silver configurations that denoted her station. She watched Sergeant Thatcher Morrison enter through the far doors. He looked profoundly uncomfortable. His dress uniform was correct and clean, but he wore it like armor that did not quite fit. He moved through the crowd of diplomats and officials with the bearing of someone who wished very much to be anywhere else. When he reached the front, Queen Cassia spoke. Her voice resonated through the hall with the kind of authority that came from 50 years of leadership. Sergeant Thatcher Morrison, in the depths of night when my daughter was lost and uncertain, you offered Kath. Care without calculation. Protection without expectation. You treated a stranger with kindness when you believed no recognition would come. You embodied the principle we Avari hold most sacred. Cassia lifted a small crystal pendant. It caught the light refracting into rainbow patterns across the walls. This is given rarely to those who reveal true character in unwitnessed moments. Wear it as a reminder that the universe notices even when we believe ourselves unseen. Thatcher accepted the pendant. His hands were steady. He managed a response that Alara could not quite hear from where she stood, something appropriate and brief. Then he was retreating back to his position, clearly relieved the attention had moved past him. But before he stepped back, their eyes met across the space, just for a moment. She saw recognition there, understanding that something larger than a simple commendation was happening, that his life had changed the moment he opened his door at 3 in the morning. She smiled, small, genuine, not a diplomatic smile, a real one. He did not smile back, but something in his expression softened. Acknowledgement. The formal dinner afterward was excruciating. Alara had no idea which utensils to use for the human courses. A delegate from Proxima 4 kept making jokes she did not understand. A Centauri ambassador asked her detailed questions about Avari cultural protocols that she answered by rote while her mind wandered elsewhere. High Counselor Marin approached her between courses, his patterns showing formal blue, but his voice carrying edge. Your mother's commendation is generous. Let us hope the sergeant proves worthy of such attention. The warning was clear. The council was watching. Not everyone approved. Then Thatcher appeared at her elbow, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to maintain propriety. Overwhelmed, he asked. Completely. Walk with me. They escaped to one of the station's observation lounges. Through the massive viewport, the silver moon below cast reflected light across the darkness of space. The stars burned cold and distant. They stood in silence for several minutes. I am sorry, Alara said finally. My mother meant well, but she can be intense. She honored me in front of the diplomatic corps. She scared me more than any combat briefing I have had. Alara laughed. The sound surprised her. That sounds disrespectful. It sounds honest. He turned to face her. I appreciated what you did that night, but I need to say something clearly. Her patterns flickered with sudden nervousness. Yes, you treated me like a person, not a title. That mattered. And I want you to know that regardless of what your mother's ceremony meant politically, I would have done the same thing for anyone who knocked on my door at 3 in the morning, looking lost. I know, Alara said quietly. That is why I knocked. He studied her. She watched him processing that statement, understanding dawning in his expression. You knew where the sanctuary chambers were. Not a question, a realization. She could lie. Continue the fiction. But she had tested his honesty. He deserved hers. Yes, Thatcher nodded slowly. His face showed no anger, just thoughtful consideration. You were testing me. I needed to know if honor existed beyond political calculation. My mother suggested I observe you. I chose to observe directly, by pretending to be lost and seeing how I responded. Yes, they stood in silence. Elara waited for anger, for accusation of manipulation, for the withdrawal that would mean she had broken something before it could properly form. Instead, Thatcher said, "Was I supposed to pass or fail? I did not know, I hoped. And you passed." She turned to look out at the stars. "You gave me exactly what I needed. Kindness without expectation, care without calculation. Proof that the principles my people claim to value still exist in someone." "I am not special," Thatcher said. "I just did what any decent person would do. That is what makes it special. You think it is ordinary, that it should be the standard. But it is not. Not where I live." He was quiet for a moment. Then carefully he asked, "Where do you live?" "In a world where every gesture has meaning, where every word is calculated for political impact, where nothing happens without audience and nothing is done without expectation of benefit. I live in a very careful, very empty place. And you wanted to see if something different existed. Yes? Here I am then, completely ordinary, definitely not politically useful. Just a sergeant from Montana who fixes broken things and files reports about malfunctioning door sensors." Elara smiled. "You undersell yourself. You tested me in secret at 3 in the morning. I think I am allowed some humility." They talked for another hour, about his farm, about her palace, about the strange experience of living on a space station where 17 different species tried to coexist in manufactured habitat, about the little things that made life bearable when grand purposes failed. When they finally parted, he said, "For what it is worth, I am glad you knocked on my door, even if I was the test subject in your experiment. It was not an experiment, it was a hope." "What do you hope for now?" Elara considered the question. "To find out what comes after the test." They began meeting after that. Nothing official, nothing announced, just conversations in quiet corners of the station. She would find him in the observation lounge after his shift. He would appear in the botanical gardens where she walked when diplomatic functions grew suffocating. They talked about everything. She asked about Earth, about seasons and weather, and the experience of living on a planet with natural gravity. He asked about Avari Prime, about the palace architecture, about bioluminescent patterns, and what they meant in social contexts. She told him about growing up in a world where every gesture was analyzed, every word measured for diplomatic weight, every relationship calculated for political advantage. He told her about growing up on a farm where problems were direct and solutions were practical. Tractor breaks, you fix it. Irrigation fails, you repair it. Crops need planting, you plant them. "You miss it," she observed one evening in the botanical gardens. "Sometimes." He was quiet for a moment, considering. Simpler problems, things you could solve with your hands and actual tools. No interstellar incidents involved. "You would go back." "I do not think I fit there anymore. Military changes you. This place changes you." He paused. "You ask a lot of questions about Earth. I am curious about you." The way she said it made something shift in the air between them. He looked at her. Really looked. Not at the princess in formal attire displaying diplomatic patterns. At Elara, the woman who had knocked on his door at 3 in the morning because she needed to know if kindness still existed. "You are a princess. I am a sergeant. The mathematics do not work." "Mathematics has nothing to do with this." Elara. Her name in his voice. The first time he had said it outside formal address. "I need you to understand something. Whatever this is, it has consequences. For you especially. Your position, your responsibilities, your people's expectations. I cannot be the reason you lose something that matters. What if you are the reason I find something that matters more?" He had no answer for that. Neither of them did. So they stood in the garden, surrounded by species from a dozen worlds' plants, growing in manufactured soil under artificial light, Two people from different species finding something real in a constructed environment. Weeks became a month. The meetings continued. Ilara found herself thinking about him during diplomatic briefings, during ceremonial functions, during the endless formal interactions that defined her existence. She found herself watching for him in corridors, timing her walks to coincide with his shift changes, creating excuses to be where he might appear. Once she convinced him to try Avari meditation techniques in the sanctuary chambers. She showed him the proper breathing patterns, the mental focus disciplines her teachers had drilled into her since childhood. He tried. He genuinely tried. But 10 minutes into the session, his breathing had evened into sleep. She had looked at him, sprawled awkwardly on the meditation floor, exhausted from double shifts and the constant vigilance his job required, and laughed softly. Her patterns danced with genuine joy, not diplomatic amusement, real happiness. When he woke embarrassed and apologetic, she had teased him. I have meditation chambers for sleeping. I have terrible posture from crouching on patrol, he countered. Your floors are very hard. You are making excuses. I am making observations. And they had both smiled, aware they were flirted, aware they were crossing invisible lines, aware they were building something that had no clear future but felt more real than anything else in their carefully constructed lives. Then word came that Lord Varen would arrive at the station soon. The arranged courtship, delayed by Queen Cassia's diplomatic maneuvering, could not be postponed further. The Avari Council demanded formal consideration of the political marriage. Varen was honorable, accomplished, connected to powerful factions. He would be a dutiful husband, a strategic ally, an appropriate match. He would never ask about earth farms, or laugh at upside-down maps, or fall asleep during meditation. Ilara sat in her chambers the night the notification came and realized she was out of time. The test had proven Kath existed. The subsequent weeks had proven something else entirely. That she had fallen in love with a human sergeant who thought he was ordinary and had no idea how extraordinary that ordinariness appeared to someone who had never experienced it. She had limited time before Varen arrived. Limited time before formal courtship began. Limited time before she would have to choose between duty and the things she had found at 3 in the morning when she knocked on the wrong door for all the right reasons. Limited time to figure out if what had started as a test could become something real enough to survive the daylight of political reality. Ilara stood at her viewport and watched the moon turn below and wondered if courage could be tested the same way character could. If she could knock on another door, a more metaphorical one, and see what answered. She had tested him for honor. Now she would have to test herself for strength. The wrong door had opened to the right person. Now she had to decide what to do about it. 2 weeks had passed since word of Lord Varen's arrival came. 2 weeks Ilara spent preparing herself for what duty demanded. She practiced the formal greetings, reviewed the courtship protocols, steeled herself for the performance that would begin the moment he stepped onto the station. Now he stood before her, and there was no more time for delay. Lord Varen arrived on a Tuesday morning with an entourage of 12 and enough ceremonial baggage to fill 3 cargo transports. Ilara watched from the diplomatic observation deck as his vessel docked with practiced precision. The ship bore the colors of House Varen, ancient bloodlines that stretched back to the first councils of Avari Prime. He was everything the council wanted, everything protocol demanded, everything duty required. Ilara felt nothing but dread. The formal greeting took place in the grand reception hall. Varen stood tall in traditional courtship armor, his patterns displaying the deep blue and gold that signified noble lineage and military accomplishment. He was handsome by Avari standards, his features strong and symmetrical, his bearing confident without arrogance. When he looked at her, she saw respect, appreciation, dutiful interest, but she did not see curiosity. He looked at Princess Ilara of Avari. He did not look for the woman underneath. Your Highness, he bowed with perfect formality. House Varen is honored to begin formal courtship as the council has arranged. Arranged, the word landed heavy. This was transaction, not choice. Alliance, not connection. Lord Varen, Ilara replied, her patterns shifting to appropriate diplomatic configuration. Welcome to Citadel Station. Queen Cassia stood beside her, patterns, neutral face unreadable. But when Varen turned to greet the other delegates, Cassia's hand brushed Ilara's arm. The briefest touch, comfort, apology, acknowledgement that this was happening and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it, without political catastrophe. The formal courtship began the next day. Avari tradition demanded specific rituals, shared meals where conversation followed prescribed topics, cultural presentations where both parties demonstrated knowledge of history and custom, meditation sessions where patterns were synchronized to show compatibility. Elara performed each ritual with practiced precision. She had been trained for this since childhood. She knew exactly which colors to display, which words to speak, which gestures to make. She played the role of princess, considering a suitable match. But at night, alone in her chambers, she thought about a human sergeant who had given her a thermal blanket and asked if she was all right before he asked who she was. She saw Thatcher sometimes in the corridors. He would nod with professional courtesy and move past, maintaining distance, understanding without being told that everything had changed, that the casual meetings in observation lounges and botanical gardens could no longer happen, that whatever had been growing between them was being crushed under the weight of duty and expectation. It lasted 2 months. 2 months of formal dinners where conversation followed prescribed topics, 2 months of cultural ceremonies and meditation synchronization attempts. 2 months of Varen being perfectly appropriate and completely uninterested in anything about her that was not relevant to political alliance. Then on the 68th day of courtship, Elara broke. It happened during a meditation synchronization session. She and Varen sat in the sanctuary chamber's patterns supposed to harmonize into matched wavelengths that would indicate spiritual compatibility. His patterns cycled through the prescribed sequence, deep blue to silver to gold, the colors of nobility, wisdom, strength. Hers flickered erratically, unable to match, unable to force herself into the configuration that protocol demanded. Varen opened his eyes. "You are distressed. I apologize. I will try again." "That is not what I asked." His voice was not unkind, just observant. "You are distressed. Why?" Elara looked at him, really looked. She saw an honorable man doing his duty. She saw someone who would be a competent partner in political matters. She saw everything the council wanted for her. She did not see anyone who would ask about earth farms or fall asleep during meditation or care that she laughed for the first time in years at a story about reading a map upside down. "I cannot do this," she said quietly. Varen was silent for a long moment. Then he rose and moved to sit beside her, not touching, just present. "You have feelings for the human sergeant," he said, not a question. Elara's patterns flared shock. "I have not been inappropriate. I did not say you had. I said you have feelings for him. There is a difference." Varen's patterns shifted to something softer, understanding. "I have watched you these 2 months. I have watched you perform every ritual correctly while your heart is elsewhere. I am not blind, princess. The council wants political alliance, but they also claim to value Cath. And Cath includes the freedom to choose one's path when that choice serves higher principles. How does choosing a human sergeant over you serve higher principles?" Varen smiled. It was the first genuine expression she had seen from him. "Because authenticity serves truth, and truth serves everything else. You cannot lead your people toward genuine connection with other species while denying genuine connection in your own life." Elara felt something loosen in her chest. "You are supposed to want this marriage. I want a partner who chooses me, not one who accepts me because duty demands it." He stood. "I will complete the formal courtship period as protocol requires, but I will also observe. And if at the end you choose differently, I will support that choice publicly." "Why would you do that?" "Because I am not your enemy, princess. I am someone trapped in the same system you are. And if you find a way out that preserves honor while claiming freedom, then perhaps others can follow." He left her sitting in the sanctuary chambers, patterns flickering with confusion and hope, and something very close to gratitude. That night, Elara went to her mother. Cassia sat in her private office reviewing diplomatic correspondence, her patterns showing the deep concentration that meant she was managing multiple crises simultaneously. When Elara entered, the queen dismissed all the screens with a gesture. "You look troubled." "Varen knows." Cassia's patterns did not flicker. "Knows what?" "About Thatcher, about my feelings, about everything. And he said he would support my choice if I choose to refuse the marriage." Now Cassia's patterns shifted. Surprise, consideration, something else Alara could not quite read. Lord Varen is more perceptive than the council credits, Cassia said slowly. But perception and political reality are different matters. I can delay this marriage, Alara. I have delayed it. But I cannot refuse it without cause that the council will accept. What cause would they accept? A better alliance. Something that serves Avari interests more substantially than a marriage to House Varen. Alara felt the trap of it. You want me to make a political argument for Thatcher. I want you to make an argument for yourself, for what you want, and to make it in terms the council cannot dismiss. Cassia's voice softened. I gave you time. You are now 4 months into that time. In 2 more months, I must either support your formal union with Varen or face council revolt. So you have 2 months to build your case. And if I cannot, Cassia looked at her daughter with something that might have been grief. Then you will marry Lord Varen and do your duty, and perhaps find happiness later. Or perhaps not, but you will survive. Is survival enough? It is what most of us get, child, the rest is grace. Alara left her mother's office, feeling the weight of timeline and expectation. 2 months, 8 weeks, 60 days to figure out how to choose her own path without destroying everything her people had built. She walked the corridors of the diplomatic quarter and found herself outside the observation lounge. Through the viewport, the moon below cast silver light across darkness. She had stood here with Thatcher months ago, talking about overwhelm and honesty, and the strange experience of being seen as a person rather than a title. She wanted to find him, to talk, to ask for guidance. But he was on patrol somewhere in the station's vast network, and she was trapped in the diplomatic wing by protocol and guards and expectations. Then 3 months into Lord Varen's courtship, the explosion happened. Alara was in a ceremonial function with the Centauri delegation when the alarm sounded. The station's emergency systems activated lights shifting to red alert, automated announcements directing all personnel to designated safe zones. Engineering section breach, the announcement stated. Station-wide lockdown initiated. All diplomatic personnel report to secure quarters immediately. The Centauri delegates moved with practiced efficiency. Alara found herself surrounded by guards swept along corridors toward the diplomatic wing's secure rooms. Around her, chaos. Species from 17 worlds trying to reach safety. Station security directing traffic. The particular kind of controlled panic that came from living in a habitat where hull breach meant death. She thought about Thatcher. He would be responding to the emergency, running toward danger while everyone else ran away. That was his job. That was who he was. The diplomatic wing sealed. All personnel accounted for. All representatives from member species secured in designated quarters. Protocol demanded they remain here until the all-clear sounded. Alara sat in her chambers and monitored the emergency feeds. The explosion had been in the lower engineering section. No hull breach. Minimal casualties. Security was investigating cause. Initial assessment suggested equipment malfunction, possibly sabotage. The all-clear did not sound. Hours passed. Then a day. Then 2 days. Station remained on lockdown. Investigation ongoing. All personnel confined to designated areas except essential security and engineering staff. The diplomatic wing became a prison of protocol and waiting. Alara paced her chambers and received hourly updates that told her nothing useful. Engineering sections secured, damage contained, investigation proceeding, no further incidents. But no all clear, and no information about casualties, about whether a particular security sergeant was among those injured or safe. On the 3rd day, she made her choice. She summoned her guards and informed them that she was going to the medical bay. They protested. Protocol forbade diplomatic personnel from leaving secure quarters during lockdown. She outranked them. She was going. They escorted her through corridors that still showed red emergency lighting. The station felt wrong, tense, frightened. She passed security checkpoints, in maintenance teams, in engineers working to repair damaged systems. Everyone moved with urgent purpose except her. She was breaking protocol to check on someone who might not even want her there. The medical bay was crowded. Injured personnel occupied treatment pods. Medical staff moved between patients with efficient calm. Alara scanned faces looking for one particular person among the organized chaos. She found him in a recovery area sitting on an examination table, while a medic applied dermal regenerator to burns on his left arm. His face was smudged with smoke residue. His uniform was torn, but he was alive. "You should not be here," Thatcher said when he saw her. "Not angry, just stating fact. Neither should you. You should be resting. Minor injuries. They need the pods for critical cases." The medic finished treatment and moved to the next patient. Alara stood awkwardly in the recovery area, suddenly aware she had no justification for being there, except that she had needed to know he was safe. "What happened?" she asked. "Explosive device in the environmental control systems. Small targeted, meant to disrupt station operations, not cause major damage." His voice was tired, flat, the tone of someone who had been awake for 3 days straight. "Who would do this?" "We are still investigating, but initial evidence points to labor faction. Station workers unhappy with new contract terms. They wanted to make a point without actually hurting anyone." "They hurt you." "I was in the wrong place when secondary explosion occurred." "Occupational hazard." He looked at her directly. "You broke protocol to come here." "Yes." "Why?" Alara felt her patterns flicker with emotions she could not quite name. Fear, relief, frustration. Something deeper that she had been trying to ignore for months. "Because I needed to know you were safe. Because I have spent 3 days watching diplomatic feeds that told me nothing while you were running toward explosions. Because I could not sit in my chambers pretending I did not care whether you were alive or dead." Thatcher was quiet. Around them, medical staff worked. Injured personnel received treatment. Life continued in its urgent, chaotic way. "You are in formal courtship with Lord Varon," he said finally. "I know. You will probably marry him in 2 months." "I know." "Then why are you here, Alara?" She heard the question underneath. "Why are you making this harder for both of us? Why are you refusing to let this go? Why are you choosing to care when caring will only make the inevitable more painful?" "Because I have no answer that satisfies both heart and duty," she said quietly. "I thought I could perform the courtship rituals and ignore what I felt. I thought I could be practical. But then someone put a bomb in the engineering section, and for 3 days I did not know if you were alive, and I realized I cannot just pretend this does not matter." "It matters," Thatcher said, "but mattering does not change reality. You have responsibilities that extend beyond personal feelings, and I will not be the reason you fail your people. What if my people need me to be authentic more than they need me to be dutiful? That is not how political alliance works." "Maybe it should be." They stared at each other. Alara saw exhaustion in his face. She saw the burns on his arm that had not fully healed. She saw someone who had spent 3 days running toward danger while she sat in comfort and safety. She saw someone who cared about her enough to push her toward duty even when it cost him everything. "You are tired," she said. "You should rest. I should get back to my post." "Thatcher," his name stopped him. "I am glad you are safe. I am glad you care, even if it complicates everything." And he left. Alara stood in the medical bay surrounded by injured personnel and overworked staff and felt something inside her crystallize into certainty. She had tested him for honor at 3 in the morning. He had tested her these past months by giving her space to fulfill duty even when it hurt them both. They had both been trying to do the right thing, but maybe the right thing was not the one that honored protocol. Maybe it was the one that honored truth. The sabotage investigation concluded 5 days after the explosion. Thatcher had been correct. A labor faction upset about contract negotiations had planted devices meant to disrupt operations without causing serious harm. Security had negotiated with the faction leaders. Agreements were reached. Charges were reduced in exchange for cooperation. The crisis ended not with force, but with conversation. Alara learned about it from official reports. She also learned something else. 12 workers had been involved in the sabotage. Station administration had wanted harsh punishment, expulsion criminal charges, permanent bans from future employment on any Federation facility. She had spoken privately with several administrators, arguing for understanding over retribution. They felt unheard, she had said in one particularly tense meeting with the station's Civilian Oversight Board. Punishment without addressing their concerns teaches them nothing except that power ignores them. Show them mercy. Show them their voices matter. then address the contract issues that drove them to desperation. The workers received reduced sentences, community service instead of expulsion, mandatory mediation sessions but not criminal records, and the administration agreed to reopen contract negotiations with actual worker representation instead of just management dictating terms. It was not perfect, but it was more than they would have received without her advocacy, and people noticed. Station Commander Drake summoned them both to his office 3 days later. He was a career officer, gray-haired and direct, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades managing impossible situations. Sergeant Morrison, Princess Alara, he gestured to chairs. I've been watching you both since the sabotage crisis. Different approaches to same problem. Both effective, both compassionate. Alara exchanged glance with Thatcher. Neither had expected this meeting. The station needs liaison officers who can bridge diplomatic and security concerns, who understand that force isn't always the answer, who can negotiate instead of dominate. Drake's eyes moved between them. I'm recommending you both for the positions, if you're interested. Sir, Thatcher began, the princess has other. The princess can speak for herself, Alara interrupted gently. She turned to Drake. What would these positions entail? Drake outlined the roles. Coordination between diplomatic and security personnel, conflict resolution across species boundaries, cultural mediation when misunderstandings arose, crisis management that prioritized de-escalation over dominance. Exactly the kind of work that would prove authentic partnership serve practical purposes beyond romantic sentiment. I'll consider it, Alara said, meaning I'll fight for it. Sergeant Morrison. Thatcher glanced at Alara. She saw the calculation in his eyes. This would mean working together officially. It would put them in constant proximity. It would make everything harder, or it would make everything possible. I'm honored by the recommendation, sir, Thatcher said carefully. Good, I'll file the formal paperwork. Drake stood signaling dismissal. One more thing, you both demonstrated something rare during that crisis. Not just competence, compassion. The Federation needs more leaders who understand that distinction. They left Drake's office in silence, neither speaking until they were alone in a maintenance quarter. The commendation, Alara said, this is an opportunity. This is complicated. Everything is complicated. She turned to face him. But it is also recognition, validation that what we might build together serves more than just personal desires. Alara, you cannot accept a position working with me while you are in formal courtship with Varen. The Council cannot object to me performing duties that serve station interests. Her patterns flickered with determination. This is not about romance. This is about demonstrating that our approaches to leadership complement each other. That genuine partnership creates better outcomes. You are making political argument. I am building a case. She met his eyes. You told me to test myself for courage, to fight for what I believe. This is me fighting. He was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly she almost missed it. I am proud of you. The words settled something inside her. Not love, though that was there too. Respect, recognition, partnership. Will you take the position? She asked. If you take it, yes. But Alara, you need to understand what you are committing to. 2 months of working together while you are promised to someone else. 2 months of proving ourselves while the council watches for any misstep. I know. And at the end, you may still have to marry Varen. Then at least I will know I tried, that I fought for what I believed instead of accepting what everyone expected. She paused. Will you help me? I am not fighting this battle for you, but I will stand with you while you fight it yourself. That is what partners do. Partners, the word resonated through her. This was not just about choosing him over Varen. It was about choosing a different kind of leadership, a different way of being in the world, a different understanding of what duty meant. She had 2 months to prove it, 2 months to convince the council, 2 months to build something real enough to withstand scrutiny, 2 months to become the person she needed to be. They met in the observation lounge late that night, and the first time they had been alone since the medical bay. The moon below cast silver light across the viewport. The stars burned cold and distant. I need to tell you something, Alara said. The words came before she could stop them, before caution and protocol could intervene. That night, the 3 a.m. knock, I was not lost. She watched his face, saw surprise flicker across it, but not shock, as if somewhere part of him had already known. I knew where the sanctuary chambers were, she continued. I had studied the maps for weeks. I deliberately found your quarters. I knocked on your door at 3 in the morning and lied to you because I was testing whether you had character, whether Kath existed, whether someone could be kind without expectation of reward. Silence, just the hum of the station around them, the distant stars through the viewport. Then Thatcher said something she did not expect. I know. Alara's patterns flashed shock. What? I knew you were not lost. Navigation expert does not wander into residential sectors by accident. The sanctuary chambers are clearly marked. The route makes no logical sense. He turned to face her fully. I knew from the moment you knocked that something else was happening. I chose to help anyway. You knew. She could barely process it. This entire time you knew it, I was testing you. I suspected that first night. I confirmed it later when I thought about how someone trained in diplomatic protocols would approach evaluation. You needed to see how I responded to someone vulnerable, someone with no power to reward or punish me. So you created that scenario, and you just played along. I gave you what you came seeking, honest response to someone in need. I figured if you wanted to test my character, the least I could do was demonstrate it authentically. His voice was gentle. But I also knew you needed more than that. You needed safe space. You needed someone to see you as Alara, not Princess Alara. So I offered that too. Alara felt something crack open inside her. All these months she had carried the guilt of deception, the awareness that their connection had begun with her lie. And he had known. He had known and chosen honesty anyway. Why did you not tell me you knew? Because you were not ready to hear it. You needed to believe you had fooled me. You needed that small rebellion against the life that controls everything else. He paused. And because I was testing you too. Testing me, whether you would eventually tell the truth, whether guilt would drive you toward honesty even when confession risked everything, whether you were capable of the same authenticity you demanded from me. They stood in the observation lounge, two people who had been testing each other from the beginning, slowly revealing truths underneath the careful layers of protocol and protection. What happens now? Alara asked. Now you have 2 months to convince the council. 2 months to build an argument that authenticity matters more than arrangement. 2 months to become the leader you need to be. What if courage is not enough? Then you fail, but you fail being yourself, not being whoever they expect you to be. He stepped closer. You are asking the wrong question. You keep asking how to choose between duty and happiness, but that is not your real choice. Your real choice is what kind of leader you want to be. Someone who follows scripts because that is what has always been done, or someone who shows your people that genuine connection matters, that authentic partnership serves everyone better than dutiful arrangement. The council. The council does not get to decide who you are, Alara. They get to decide whether they accept your decision. But you decide who you want to be. His voice was firm. You tested me for character. You found it. Now you need to test yourself for courage. Not courage to choose me specifically. Courage to choose your own path. Courage to show your people that their princess can lead with authenticity and wisdom instead of just protocol and arrangement. I am asking you to break every protocol that matters. I am asking you to risk your career. You are asking me to stand with you while you fight for what you believe. That is what partners do. He reached out, stopped just short of touching her face. You knocked on my door at 3 in the morning to test if honor existed when you could have just accepted what everyone told you. You broke protocol to check on me in medical bay when you could have stayed safe. You advocated for workers who had no power when you could have demanded harsh punishment. You have always been strong enough. You just have not believed it yet. She leaned into his almost touch, felt the warmth of his hand near her cheek, saw his eyes steady and certain reflecting back the person she wanted to be. 2 months, she said. 2 months to build your case, to figure out what you want to say to the council, to decide what kind of leader you are. I choose this, Alara said quietly. Not just you, but this. what we have, what we could build together. I choose to fight for it. Then fight, and I will be here when you need me." They stood in the observation lounge as the moon turned below and the stars burned distant and cold. Two people who had tested each other for character and found something neither expected. Connection that transcended protocol. Partnership that served principles larger than personal comfort. Ilara had 2 months to convince the council. 2 months to build an argument that authenticity mattered more than arrangement. 2 months to become the leader she needed to be. She left the lounge feeling something she had not felt since childhood. Hope. Not the careful, managed kind that diplomatic training taught. Real hope. The dangerous kind that made you believe change was possible if you were brave enough to reach for it. The wrong door at 3 in the morning had opened her world. Now she had to decide whether to walk through it completely or retreat to the safety of what everyone expected. 2 months to choose her path. 2 months to test her own courage. 2 months to discover if the woman who knocked on that door had the strength to become the leader her people needed. The test had never been about him. It had always been about her. Now it was time to see what she was truly made of. Ilara spent 4 weeks preparing her case. 4 weeks of research and consultation and careful construction of argument that would either save her future or destroy it. She studied every treaty the Avari had negotiated with human governments, every cultural exchange program, every instance where cross-species cooperation had strengthened rather than weakened Avari interests. She compiled evidence that genuine partnerships served diplomatic goals better than formal arrangement. She also talked to people, station administrators who had watched human-Avari cooperation evolve over the years, delegates from other species who had formed unlikely alliances that proved more durable than traditional marriages, workers who had benefited from compassionate leadership during the sabotage crisis. She gathered testimonials, collected data, built a foundation of evidence that her vision of leadership was not just idealistic sentiment, but practical strategy. And she talked to Lord Varen. They met privately in the sanctuary chambers, away from guards and protocol and expectation. He sat across from her with the same calm dignity he had shown throughout the courtship. "You are building a case against our marriage," he observed. "I am building a case for authenticity. There is a difference. Tell me your argument." So she did. She laid out everything she had learned. The evidence that showed genuine connection served Avari interests better than formal arrangement. The examples of successful cross-species partnerships that had weathered crises traditional alliances could not. The principle that their people claimed to value Cath but rarely practiced it when personal choice conflicted with political convenience. Varen listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You make a compelling argument," he said finally, "but you miss something crucial." Ilara felt her patterns flicker anxiety. "What?" "You frame this as serving Avari interests, but the council will hear it as serving your personal desires. They will say you are using diplomatic language to justify emotional choice." He leaned forward. "What you need is not better evidence. You need to reframe the question entirely. Halkain, stop asking them to approve your choice of partner. Ask them what kind of leader they want. Someone who performs duty without question, or someone who demonstrates the principles they claim to value." His patterns showed thoughtful blue. "Make it about leadership philosophy, not relationship status. About showing your people that authentic connection is not weakness, but strength." The council will still oppose. Some will, but others will see opportunity. Your generation must lead eventually. Better they shape you into leader they respect than force you into role that makes you resent them. He paused. "And when you present your case, I will support you." "Varen, I told you weeks ago I want partner who chooses me. You do not. That is not failure on either part. That is honesty." His voice was firm. "I will withdraw my suit honorably. I will state that I believe your approach to leadership serves Avari better than traditional arrangement, and I will mean it." Ilara felt something loosen in her chest, not love, not even deep friendship, but profound respect for someone who understood that honor sometimes meant letting go. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I am trapped in the same system you are fighting. And if you break free without destroying yourself, then perhaps others can follow." He smiled. "Also because I watched you advocate for station workers while most royalty would demand punishment. That showed me more about your character than any courtship ritual ever could. You will be good queen someday, better than you would be with me. 3 days before the council deadline, Alara met with her mother. Queen Cassia sat in private chambers reviewing the case Alara had prepared. Her patterns cycled through, considering colors as she read. Blue for thought, silver for evaluation, occasional flickers of gold that might have been approval or concern. When she finished, she looked at her daughter with an expression Alara could not quite decipher. You built strong argument, but argument is not what the council will hear. They will hear daughter refusing duty for personal preference, and they will hear challenge to their authority to arrange political marriages. Cassia's voice was gentle. You understand what you are risking. Yes. If the council rejects this, you will marry Varen. There will be no further delays, no additional appeals. The matter will be settled. I know. And you choose to proceed anyway. Alara met her mother's gaze. I choose to be authentic. If that costs me everything, then at least I will know who I am when I lose. Cassia was quiet for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. Pride. Sadness. Something else Alara had never seen in her mother's face. 6 months ago, I suggested you observe Sergeant Morrison. Do you remember what I said? That I should see it if honor still exists beyond political necessity. No. Cassia's patterns shifted to deep gold. Royal authority. I said you should observe whether it does. I never told you what to find, never told you what to conclude. I gave you question and let you seek answer yourself. I do not understand. This was never about Sergeant Morrison specifically. It was about whether you could evaluate character independently, whether you could make choices based on principles rather than protocol, whether you had the strength to lead authentically instead of just dutifully. Cassia stood, moved to the viewport. The 3 a.m. test was about him. What came after was about you. Alara felt realization dawn. You have been testing me this entire time. I have been teaching you. There is a difference, Baal. Cassia turned back. Every delay I granted, every political maneuver to buy you time, every private conversation where I pushed you to build your case, all of it was preparation for this moment, when you would have to stand before the council and defend not just your choice of partner, but your vision of leadership. You knew I would refuse Varen. I hoped you would, not because of Sergeant Morrison, because refusing would force you to articulate what you believe, to fight for your principles, to show the council that you are not just my daughter following scripts, but a leader in your own right with your own philosophy. Her voice softened. Your father was dutiful. He performed his role perfectly, but he never questioned whether the role was right. I do not want that for you. What if the council rejects me? Then they reject me too, because I raised you to think independently. I raised you to value authenticity over convenience. I raised you to be the kind of leader our people need, not the kind they are accustomed to. Cassia placed her hand on Alara's shoulder. You will present your case tomorrow. You will argue for your vision of authentic leadership. And I will support you, whatever the council decides. Alara felt tears on her face. Her patterns flickered wild with emotion. All her life she had thought her mother represented duty and tradition. Now she understood. Cassia had been preparing her for this moment since childhood, teaching her to question, to evaluate, to choose. I am frightened. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes, but do not let it paralyze you. Cassia's grip tightened. You knocked on Sergeant Morrison's door at 3 a.m. because you needed to know if honor existed. You found it. Now you must show the council that you possess it too, not by following their expectations, by exceeding them. The emergency council session convened on a Friday evening. All 7 council members present, Queen Cassia presiding, Lord Varen attending as interested party, the diplomatic corps observing from designated galleries. Alara stood before them in full royal regalia patterns displaying formal gold and silver. But underneath the ceremonial appearance, she felt nothing but raw determination. High Counselor Marin spoke first. His patterns showed the deep conservative blue of traditional authority. She remembered his warning at the commendation ceremony months ago. The council was watching. Not everyone approved. Princess Alara, you requested this session to address your formal union with Lord Varen. The courtship period has concluded. The council requires your decision. I will not accept the arranged marriage. Silence. Absolute. The kind of silence that precedes storms. Then chaos. Multiple council members speaking at once. Patterns flashing colors that range from shocked orange to angry red. Protocol demands, tradition requires, duty compels. Cassia let it continue for 30 seconds. Then she raised her hand. Silence fell immediately. Princess Alara will explain her reasoning. You will listen. Alara stepped forward. This was the moment. Everything she had prepared. Everything she believed. Everything she was risking. 6 months ago, I tested a human sergeant at 3 in the morning. I knocked on his door pretending to be lost because I needed to know if Kath still existed beyond political convenience. If someone could demonstrate care without expectation when the universe was not watching. She watched the council, saw confusion, disapproval, Marin's patterns flashing with barely contained anger. Sergeant Morrison gave me exactly what I sought. Kindness without calculation. Protection without expectation. He proved that the principle we claim to hold most sacred actually exists in someone. He proved it without knowing he was being tested, without audience, without benefit. This does not justify refusing political alliance, Marin interrupted. I am not finished. Her voice carried authority she had never used before. You honor Kath in ceremony, you praise it in speeches, but when I demonstrate it in choice, you call it inappropriate. You claim to value authentic connection, but you demand I accept arranged marriage to secure political benefit. Which principle actually matters to you? Your personal preferences do not supersede Avari interests, another counselor argued. This is not about personal preference. This is about leadership philosophy. She had practiced this pivot with Varen. Now she deployed it. You want leader who performs duty without question. I want to be leader who demonstrates our principles authentically, who shows our people that genuine connection serves everyone better than dutiful arrangement. She pulled up data on the holographic display. Every cross-species partnership that had strengthened diplomatic ties. Every instance where authentic cooperation had succeeded, where formal arrangement had failed. The joint commendation she and Thatcher had received for compassionate leadership during the sabotage crisis. The worker testimonials about mercy and mediation. The station administrator reports about improved species cooperation. Sergeant Morrison and I approach problems identically. Not because we are romantic partners, but because we share values. We both negotiate rather than dominate. We both seek to understand rather than punish. We both demonstrate Kath in action, not just ceremony. She met each council member's gaze. You can force me to marry Lord Varen. You cannot force me to lead the way you want. And if you make me choose between authenticity and duty, I will choose authenticity every time, because that is what our people actually need from their next queen. You would abandon duty for emotion, Marin said coldly. I would redefine duty to include wisdom and compassion instead of just obedience. She turned to face him directly. You taught me our people value character, revealed in unwitnessed moments. I revealed mine, and you disapprove because it does not match your expectations. That says more about you than it does about me. The council erupted again. Alara stood in the center of the storm, patterns blazing with colors that shifted faster than she could control. She had said everything, made her case, burned every bridge that led back to safe compliance. Now she waited to see if the fire would forge something new or simply destroy her. Then Lord Varen rose. I would like to speak. Cassia nodded. The council recognizes Lord Varen. I arrived at this station months ago prepared to fulfill duty, to accept arranged marriage that would strengthen House Varen and serve Avari interest. His voice carried through the chamber. I have performed every courtship ritual correctly. Princess Alara has done the same. But performance is not partnership. He turned to face the council directly. I watched Princess Alara these past months. I watched her advocate for station workers who had no power. I watched her break protocol to ensure someone she cared for was safe during crisis. I watched her build argument for authentic leadership that serves Avari better than any formal alliance I could provide. His pattern shifted to honorable blue. She is correct. We claim to value Kath, but we only honor it when convenient. She demonstrates it when costly. That makes her better leader than most of us. Marin's patterns flashed angry red. You support this rebellion. I support honesty, and I honestly believe arranged marriage between us would serve no one. She would resent me. I would know she chose duty over desire. Our children would grow up watching parents perform partnership rather than live it. Varen's voice was firm, so I withdraw my suit, honorably, with full respect for House Varen and Avari tradition, but with greater respect for Princess Alara's right to choose her path. He bowed to Alara, a bow between equals, not between suitor and princess. Then he resumed his seat. The council chamber fell silent again. But different this time, considering, calculating, evaluating new political landscape that Varen's withdrawal had created. Queen Cassia stood. When she spoke, her voice resonated with authority that came from 5 decades of leadership. Counselors, my daughter thinks tonight was about choosing between duty and personal desire. Lord Varen thinks it was about honoring authenticity over arrangement. They are both partially correct. She paused. But I will tell you what tonight actually was. It was final test. Alara's patterns flashed shock. Mother, 6 months ago I suggested you observe Sergeant Morrison. I told you to see if honor existed. Do you remember what I did not say? Cassia's patterns showed deep gold. I never told you what to find, never told you what to conclude. I gave you question and time to seek answer independently. She turned to address the full council. Every delay I granted, every maneuver to buy time, every private conversation where I pushed Alara to build her case, all of it was preparation for tonight, to see if she could stand before this council and defend not just personal choice but leadership philosophy, to see if she possessed courage to fight for principles when fighting cost everything. You orchestrated this entire scenario. Marin's patterns showed confusion. I created opportunity. She chose what to do with it. Cassia's voice was firm. You want dutiful leader who follows scripts. We have had those. They maintain stability but prevent growth. Our species needs leaders who can demonstrate our principles authentically, who can build genuine partnerships with other species, who can show courage and wisdom, not just obedience. She moved to stand beside Alara. Tonight my daughter showed you exactly that. She built compelling case. She argued passionately. She articulated vision of leadership that serves Avari better than traditional approaches. She did not ask permission. She demanded you recognize her right to choose her path. Cassia's patterns blazed with pride. That is the leader we need, someone who fights for what she believes even when counsel opposes, even when outcome uncertain, even when easier path beckons. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every eye on Cassia, every pattern flickering with processing this revelation. The question before you is not whether to approve Alara's choice of partner. The question is whether you want leader who demonstrates our values authentically or leader who performs them dutifully. Cassia's voice carried finality. Choose wisely, because your decision tonight will determine what kind of leadership our people receive for next 50 years. She sat, the council stared. Alara felt her whole world tilt and realign. Her mother had been preparing her for this moment since childhood. Every lesson about questioning protocol, every encouragement to think independently, every subtle push toward authentic leadership, all of it leading to tonight, to this test, not of character, of courage, of wisdom, of the strength to choose her own path even when everyone else chose differently. Counselor Valen spoke first. Her patterns showed thoughtful silver. The princess makes valid points about authentic partnerships serving diplomatic interests. We have seen evidence that cross-species cooperation strengthens rather than weakens our position. She defies tradition, Marin countered. That sets dangerous precedent. She evolves tradition, another counselor argued, shows it can adapt without breaking. The debate continued for an hour. Arguments for and against, concerns about precedent balanced against recognition of changing realities. Traditional faction versus progressive faction. Old certainties versus new possibilities. Finally, Cassia called for vote. All in favor of accepting Princess Alara's refusal of arranged marriage and supporting her proposed approach to leadership through authentic partnership. Silence, patterns flickering as each counselor made their choice. Then hands rose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All opposed. 4 hands, including Marin's. The traditional faction making their opposition clear. 7-4. The motion passes. Cassia's voice was steady. Princess Alara's choice is accepted. Her vision of authentic leadership is endorsed. This council supports her path forward. Alara felt her knees weaken. 7-4. Not unanimous, not overwhelming, but enough, barely enough. She had won. Marin stood his patterns showing formal resignation. I register my dissent. This decision will have consequences. All leadership decisions have consequences, Cassia replied. We trust Princess Alara to manage them wisely. The session concluded. The council dispersed. Alara stood in the chamber feeling simultaneously triumphant and exhausted. She had fought for her principles. She had won. But victory felt strange, uncertain, like standing at the edge of a cliff with no clear path forward. Varen approached as she gathered her materials. Congratulations, Princess. Thank you for supporting me, for withdrawing honorably, for understanding. I told you before, I want a partner who chooses me. You chose differently. That deserves respect, not resentment. He bowed. Lead well. Show them authentic connection serves better than arrangement. Prove tonight's vote was correct. He left. Alara stood alone until her mother returned. You knew, Alara said quietly. You knew I would refuse Varen. You knew I would fight. You orchestrated all of it. I created conditions. You made choices. Cassia's patterns showed deep satisfaction. And you made correct ones, not because they were easy, because they were true. What happens now? Now you prove tonight's vote was correct. You work with Sergeant Morrison as liaison partners. You demonstrate that authentic partnership serves Avari interests. You become the leader I raised you to be. Cassia placed her hand on Alara's shoulder. The hard part is not over. It is just beginning. But you have shown you possess courage to face it. The months that followed were not easy. Alara and Thatcher worked together as diplomatic and security liaison officers. They coordinated responses to incidents. They negotiated disputes between species. They demonstrated compassionate leadership in practice, not just theory. The station watched. The council watched. The diplomatic corps watched. Everyone evaluating whether Princess Alara's choice would serve or harm Avari interests. Gradually, evidence accumulated. Conflicts resolved through negotiation rather than force. Species cooperating who had been adversarial for generations. Station culture shifting toward genuine connection instead of just formal protocol. The Centauri delegation requested similar liaison arrangements after watching Alara and Thatcher work. 3 other species followed. What had started as controversial choice became model for diplomatic innovation. Commander Drake commended them repeatedly. His reports to Federation headquarters praised their approach. Other stations began implementing similar programs. What Alara and Thatcher had built together was changing how the Federation approached cross-species cooperation. They were careful, professional and public, maintaining appropriate boundaries even as they built partnership that went deeper than professional collaboration. They learned to read each other, to anticipate responses, to work in synchronization that came from shared values and growing trust. The romantic element developed slowly, carefully, almost incidentally. They were too busy proving themselves to focus on relationship status. But everyone who watched them work together saw the connection. The way they communicated with minimal words. The way they supported each other through crises. The way they made each other better at everything they did. It was not the passionate romance that stories celebrated. It was better. It was partnership. Real. Earned. Built on foundation of mutual respect and shared principles. 9 months after the council vote, Cassia officially endorsed their relationship publicly. Not because she had to, because the evidence was clear that what they had built served everyone. The station functioned better. Species cooperated more effectively. Conflicts resolved more peacefully. And at the center of it all, a princess and a sergeant who had chosen authenticity over arrangement. 12 months after the 3 a.m. knock, Alara returned to Thatcher's quarters at 3 in the morning. She had planned this carefully, coordinated with station security so her movement would not trigger alarms, arranged with her guards to have privacy. This moment was too important for complications. She knocked. The sound echoed in the empty corridor, just like a year ago, but everything was different now. The door opened. Thatcher stood there wearing the same thermal shirt and fatigue pants. His hair stuck up on one side, but this time his eyes showed recognition, not confusion. This time he was expecting her. "I think I'm lost," she said softly, smiling. "No, you're not. You've always known exactly where you were going." "And where is that?" "Here, with someone who chose you as thoroughly as you chose him." She stepped inside. The quarters were the same, small, practical. But now they were shared space. Half her belongings mixed with his. Books stacked beside data pads. Avari meditation materials beside human coffee equipment. Two lives blending into one partnership. They sat in the small seating area. The same seats they had occupied a year ago, but nothing was the same. "1 year," Thatcher said. "1 year since I knocked on your door pretending to be lost. 1 year since I opened it knowing you were testing me. 1 year since we both started choosing each other." She took his hand. Real touch this time. Not almost touch. Not careful distance. Just connection. "Did you know what would happen when you let me in that night?" "I knew something would change. I did not know what." He squeezed her hand gently. "Did you?" "I knew I was testing whether honor existed. I did not know I would find it in you. I did not know I would fall in love with someone who saw me as Alara instead of Princess Alara. I did not know that test would become the most important choice of my life." "Do you regret it? The fight with the council, everything that came after?" Alara considered the question seriously. The past year had been difficult. The council pressure, the scrutiny, the constant need to prove themselves. The political battles, the moments when she wondered if she had made catastrophic mistake. But she thought about the work they had done together, the people they had helped, the example they had set, the authentic partnership they had built, the fact that she went to sleep every night knowing she had been true to herself instead of just dutiful to expectations. "No, I do not regret it, any of it, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. They taught me who I am, what I believe, what I am willing to fight for." She leaned against him. "You asked me once why I was making this harder for both of us, remember? In the medical bay after the explosion. I could not answer then, but I can now." She turned to look at him. "I made it harder because Easy was not real. Easy was performing scripts someone else wrote. Easy was accepting what everyone expected instead of fighting for what I believed. And I did not want easy. I wanted true. Even if true cost everything. Especially then, because if I could not choose truth when it cost everything, then truth meant nothing." They sat in silence for a while. The station hummed around them, 17 species living in careful proximity, diplomatic missions and cultural exchanges, and the endless work of building peace across differences. In the middle of all that complexity, two people had found something simple: genuine connection, mutual choice, partnership built on shared values and hard-won understanding. "What happens now?" Thatcher asked. "We keep working, keep proving the council's vote was correct, keep demonstrating authentic partnership serves everyone." She smiled. "And eventually, when the time is right, we formalize this officially. Not because duty demands it, because we choose it. Princess Alara and Sergeant Morrison, official diplomatic partners. Just Alara and Thatcher, partners in everything." He kissed her, soft, certain. A year of careful distance, finally giving way to full connection. She kissed him back, thinking about wrong doors and right choices, and how sometimes the most important test is the one you give yourself. When they finally pulled apart, he smiled. "So, worth knocking on the wrong door at 3 in the morning. It was never the wrong door. It was always exactly right. I just did not know it yet. And now I know, now I choose, every day, every moment. Every time the universe asked me to decide between easy and true, I choose true. She touched his face gently. I choose you. I choose us. I choose the life we are building together. Even though it is complicated. Because it is complicated. Because it is real. Because it matters. They stood together at the viewport watching the moon turn below. The same moon that had reflected light a year ago when everything was uncertain and testing and frightening. Now everything was still uncertain. Still testing. Still frightening sometimes. But it was also real. Earned. True. Alara thought about the woman who had knocked on this door 12 months ago. Desperate. Frightened. Needing to know if honor existed before she accepted a life without it. That woman had found what she sought, and in finding it had discovered something unexpected. Her own courage, her own strength, her own capacity to fight for what she believed, even when fighting cost everything. The test had never been about Thatcher. It had always been about her. Whether she possessed the strength to choose her own path, to lead authentically, to demonstrate the principles her people claimed to value. She had passed, barely, with council vote of 7-4 and a mother who had been preparing her for this moment since childhood. But she had passed. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For opening your door at 3 in the morning. For giving me thermal blanket and water and map. For treating me like person instead of title. For teaching me that honor exists. She paused. For teaching me to fight for myself instead of waiting for someone else to fight for me. You taught yourself that. I just showed you it was possible. You showed me what authentic partnership looks like, what genuine cath means, what happens when someone chooses to be kind without expecting reward. She leaned into him. You changed my life by being exactly who you are. You changed mine by knocking on my door, by choosing to test me, by fighting for what you believed. His arm came around her shoulders. We changed each other. That is what partnership means. They stood together in the quiet of 3 a.m. The station slept. The corridors lay empty. Everything was peaceful. A year ago, Princess Alara had stood at a viewport and made a choice. To test whether honor existed. To knock on a stranger's door and see what answered. Tonight, Alara stood with the man she loved and knew the answer. Honor existed. Courage existed. Authentic partnership existed. And it had all started with the wrong door at 3 a.m. Except it was never wrong. It was exactly right. It was the choice that changed everything. Sometimes the right door finds you at 3 a.m. Sometimes you are brave enough to knock. And sometimes someone answers who changes your entire world by simply offering kindness when no one is watching. Sometimes a test becomes truth. Sometimes a choice becomes destiny. Sometimes you knock on the wrong door and discover it was the right one all along. The wrong door, the right choice, the beginning of everything that mattered.